All right, we're at Power Focus Area 3. It's going to be all about ecosystems, and we'll jump right into Objective 1 here. So when we talk about ecology, and that's what we'll be studying ecosystems are part of ecology, so we want to kind of get the idea of what the whole big picture is before we jump into ecosystems. Ecology is simply studying how organisms interact with their environment. So it's not just studying life itself, like biology. We have to consider their environment. So it's very relatable to conservation. When we're talking about conservation efforts, we focus on the animals, plants, and where they live. Well, ecology studies how organisms interact with their environment. It also explains how they affect each other, so kind of like food chain, food web, habitat, niche stuff we'll get into today. One of the basics of ecology is the levels of organization. So all living things are organized in this manner. We'll start right in with the first level of organization, and that is called an organism. An organism is just one individual living thing. It's made of cells, it uses energy, it reproduces, responds, grows, and develops. All those things you should have learned in biology, but it's just a single one, like you see this zebra. One zebra is an organism. One human is an organism. One oak tree is an organism. When we get to the next level, a population is a group of organisms. All of the same species, they can interbreed and live in the same place at the same time. So look at the picture now. We have a bunch of zebras living in the same place. One zebra is an organism. A whole bunch of them that live and breed in the same area is a population. When we add to that, we get to a community. And a community is all the populations of different species living in the same area. So now you can see different animals and different plants living in that same area. So now it's a community. Remember, just zebras living together would have been a population. Now we've added other animals and plants, so we're calling it a community. Ecosystems are all the different animals and plants in an area and the abiotic, the non-living things in that area. So in this picture, we see sunlight, air, soil, amount of waterfall, those kinds of things are considered to be part of the ecosystem. So this is a bigger focus on what we study when we're studying conservation and ecology. And then biosphere is considered anywhere on Earth that supports life. So almost everywhere. If you dig down deep enough, there are places where nothing lives, but almost the whole Earth is the biosphere. So practice, what level of organization is this picture of baby Simba? Go ahead, pause if you need to, and then the answers will appear. He's just one organism because he's one little lion. All right, I see a bunch of different animals living in an area. So that is called a community. Remember, a population will be only zebras or only giraffes, but we have a lot of different animals here, so it's a community. Mama lion and baby lion, what would that be considered? Well, they're more than one of the same species, so that's a population. All right, some more vocabulary that's important in studying ecology are habitat and niche. And habitat is a pretty easy one. We've talked about it a lot this year. It's just where the animal or plant lives. A niche is kind of its total way of life. What does it do? How does it interact? Does it hunt? Is it hunted? Is it camouflaged? Is it active at night or the daytime? Kind of its total way of living or what it does where it lives. The non-living environment, we said ecology studies the living and non-living parts of the environment. The non-living is considered an abiotic factor. So that's anything that's not living in an organism's environment. Some common examples, air currents, temperature, moisture, light, soil. These abiotic factors have a huge effect on an organism's life. A polar bear would not do well in the rainforest, way too hot. So he's not adapted to that kind of temperature. Just like the animals that live in the rainforest wouldn't do well in the polar bear's climate. So these abiotic factors determine what kind of organisms can live where. Well, if abiotic factors are the non-living things in an environment, biotic factors are all the living things in an environment. So anything alive in an environment is considered biotic. And all organisms depend on each other directly or indirectly for food, shelter, reproduction, protection, things like that. Remember, abiotic means not living, bio, living, so biotic means living. Would this be a biotic or abiotic factor? Well, it's living, so it's biotic. Tornado. Not living, so abiotic. Water. not alive. There may be things living in it, but we don't see them, so this is abiotic. A tube worm. Weird, looks odd, but it is living, so it's biotic. Ooh, back to the very first thing we talked about. Deer, bears, and berry bushes. What would that be classified as? Well, different organisms living in the same area would be a community. What about a drop of water? That's crazy. Believe it or not, it can be an entire ecosystem. You have little bacteria living in there. The water is not living, so you have living and non-living together. So it actually, even though it's super small, it can be an ecosystem. All right, last major topic of today are symbiotic relationships. Symbiosis is a close and permanent relationship between organisms of different species. So you've seen a lot of these, I'm sure, on nature shows, and we'll talk about them today. But the three common types are commensalism. That's actually the hardest one to remember. I would, when I'm studying, think of this last as kind of the leftover one, because in symbiosis, each type of symbiosis, at least one organism benefits. In commensalism, one benefits, and the other is neither harmed nor benefits. An example would be like vines growing on the branches or trunk of a larger tree. So the vines get closer to the sun, but they don't hurt the plant that they're on. They don't hurt the tree. So the vines benefit from getting more sunlight to make more food, and the tree doesn't get helped, but it doesn't get hurt either. If you've ever seen Finding Nemo, where does Nemo live? Well, at the beginning, he lives in an anemone. Remember, the anemone can sting things, so they are protected by the anemone. So the clownfish benefit, but the anemone doesn't get helped, and it doesn't get hurt, so it's considered commensalism. Mutualism. Well, mutual means both. In this case, both species benefit. You've probably heard of remora, or at least what they do. Those are those really tiny fish that swim next to a shark, and they actually will go into its mouth and pick off food particles from its teeth, and the shark won't eat them. The reason being, the shark benefits. It gets its teeth clean, so it avoids infections, and the fish benefit by getting food. I'm also sure you've probably seen birds on the backs of giraffes or zebras or rhinos, and they are there to eat bugs. So the giraffes, zebras, and rhinos let them stay there because they get cleaned, and the birds love being there because they get food. So the only one left is parasitism. One species benefits and the other is actually hurt. And the common examples are things like tapeworms, fleas, or ticks on dogs. The fleas and ticks benefit by getting food, but the dog is harmed by having those on them. Usually the host of a parasite is not killed, mainly because it would not be a benefit to the tapeworm or heartworm or the parasite to kill its host, because then it would have to find a new host or it would die. But the parasites do harm the host. So practice, which type of symbiotic relationship is it when one benefits and the other gets nothing good or bad? That is commensalism, if you remember. Fleas on your dog. Well, your dog is hurt, the fleas benefit, so that's parasitism.